disnudity.
Look at me, again. That became one of those running jokes on set when anytime Chris needed to get focused on someone and you use the focus assist onto their eyeballs, he would say, look at me, and then we would all laugh because it's the movie, and then he would say again and we would laugh again. But that was kind of the spirit of the film. It's such a special movie for me, and filmmakers, we will often fall in and out of love with our own movies. And generally speaking, at least for me, there's a moment right afterwards where I love it. And I tell myself it's going to be the next Say Anything, or it's going to be the next Pretty in Pink, or something like that, And then after the editing process and then the screening process at festivals, again, all I see are flaws. All I see are mistakes. Chris and I had set these goals when we started this, that we were not going to be the people that kept re-editing a film and kept polishing a turd, if you will. That we were going to always give our best effort, but be really honest with ourselves about what each movie was. So, we know guys that have been cutting the same movie for 10 years, and that movie's not going to get any better when you keep recutting the movie. So we were always very honest about what we wanted the movie to be. But, Look at Me Again it was our first real festival success, in the sense that it played a lot of places. Its first award was at the Bare Bones Film Festival, and I want to do a special shout out and thank you to Oscar and Sharon out of Bare Bones. Bare Bones, I think, was the first festival of any reputation that we got accepted into. And I remember going that first year, and with Nathan and Teresa, they missed their flight because they had a drink or two at the bar, listening to some live music. Austin puts live music in their airport. How random and weird is that? But the fact that we were there, welcomed the way we were. Now that I know running a festival is hard, and I'm on a super big tangent, but when I think of Oscar and Sharon, I think of generosity and I think of love. And because we run a festival that's big with a great reputation, it takes a lot of energy. And sometimes the energy that you give up is the energy that it takes to be nice to people. But walking in and Oscar knowing who I was based on the film, and Oscar doesn't shake hands. Oscar gives incredible hugs. It was very special. But it was our first festival film, which meant we saw it a lot more, and which meant that there were moments where, you do start to kind of fall out of love with it because you do see the flaws, you see the errors, and it's always the stuff I would have done better. It's never like, oh, I wish that line was better. But I love the fact that I love the movie again, that now that I've had distance from it, of sitting through screenings, and because I am the guy that will sit outside a screening room. I know it's such a cliche, right? But I can't watch my own film like that. So it's a movie that opened a lot of doors for us. It's a movie that led to a lot of really great friendships and a lot of really great relationships. But the thing I always come back to is the script. I wrote the script in a way that you're not supposed to write a script, at least from my view of screenwriting. I'm not a big I was inspired and then a script came out and then that was what you shot. I believe that that it's a craft and you need to work, and obviously inspiration's part of it, but it isn't, when I hear somebody that say I wrote a screenplay in a week, I automatically know it won't be good. It's just the way it is. And Look at Me Again wasn't like that and necessarily. It definitely took me a long time. It took me 2 years to write it. But I came out of one of the first Littlefield screenings and I was jacked. It was a good screening. We had a cast and crew screening and it didn't go great. And I think there are many reasons why. But then we had a public screening the next night. Shout out to Raph for putting it on for us at his bar and the Firehouse, I think. And so we had a great screening, and it was the first time that I heard people laugh at my dialogue, and really I was on a high, but I loved these characters. And so I wanted to basically write a movie about what happened. I wrote a sequel to Littlefield, essentially. I did recast the whole thing. I wanted to really explore some stuff in both a comedic and a dramatic way. And I wanted to look at things like What happens if you overthink a relationship? And that's the Kendra and Alex story, right? You're in love. Why are you not moving on? What if you make this decision at the end of Littlefield when Sherry picks Liam, and then she ends up married, a congressman's wife with a baby, and she loses her sense of herself. And so she does that right as the ex-boyfriend shows up, and she makes the ultimate mistake.
Are you home?
Everything hurts today, even sober eyes and flannel sheets.
Music has always been a driving force of our films, and a lot of it is, comes from my main influences of being a John Hughes guy and a Cameron Crowe guy. Like, the movies I grew up with always had strong soundtracks. It sometimes can be a crutch for a filmmaker where you get a good, nice selection of montages and shots together, and you get a good song to drive it, and it does a lot of the work for you. We connect to it emotionally differently. And again, the movies I grew up with, the movies that I'm influenced by, Almost Famous, all the John Hughes stuff, that is always in the back of my mind when I'm making a film. And so this was the first movie that was really heavily Texas Renegade. They are almost exclusively all the music in this movie, and they would go on to be almost exclusively the soundtrack to all of our films. And I think about those guys and then their manager, Mike Williams, and how just generous they were. And, when we would do videos for them, and it was always like, it felt like to me the most idyllic way that collaboration can work, because it was never one of, what are you gonna do for me? It was always, what can I do to help you out? It was one of the things I take away from this is my relationship with those guys. Andy would even do some original stuff for us later on. And again, it was just one of those, one of the best parts, or one of the best things to come out of this journey for me, is discovering their music and my relationship with those guys.
I had a job interview, and I told him that Mike was here to pick up something for you and Alex, but he was actually babysitting.
You had him watch Chris?
I didn't know what else to do. I was out of options.
There are a million better options. Dumpsters are better options.
I do want to do a shout out to Chris. I think the movie looks great, and it's maybe one of my favorite looking movies, and it's also one of our most unique looking movies, because it was shot on an HVX, a Panasonic, which was like the big brother of the DVX 100. But Chris put a 35 millimeter lens adapter on it, and there's like this ground glass thing going on. I'm not a cinematographer. I'm probably getting the dialogue, the terminology wrong, but I thought it looked great.
Just wanted one moment for me. I just wanted to be the most beautiful girl in the world to someone again. And Mike has always looked at me that way. At school. I mean, even when he watched me get married, he always saw the best in me. What's beautiful about me. When Liam sees me, he sees a housewife covered in baby spit who doesn't have time to do dishes or wash clothes. That's why I did it.
To me, it comes back to the actors, and it starts with Stephanie Dunbar, who is 1A or 1B of my favorite actors I've ever worked with. I think that she is incredibly talented. I think that she understands, she's theater trained, but understands what film is. Like, she knows that the back row of her audience, to use a theater parlance, is here. And that shows, and she does so much acting with so much subtle that I think people are drawn to her. And in this movie, she doesn't make a lot of likable choices. But I think that they forgive her because of her performance.
When we were filming Look at Me Again, I had up to that point probably done, I think maybe 3 films with Witchy Dolphin at that point in time. And so when Jim offered me one of the lead roles in Look at Me Again, I was really excited to take it on because the script was very meaty and intense, and it was a dramatic role and something I hadn't really done up to that point. I had been doing quite a bit of comedy. So I was really excited to have the opportunity to work on that film. While working on that film, I would say it was we had a joke going in the company that I was always cast as life ruiners. Like your job within the plot of this story is to just come in and wreck lives. And I think that was true for the role in Look at Me Again as well. Was maybe not intentionally, but she was a wee bit of a life ruiner. I think that film was very emotionally challenging for me, in part because of my own stuff happening at that time, but also some of the content of the film. But it was very, very rewarding. I remember being super proud of the end result.
You want to be a June bride? Don't most women? I don't know how I know that.
Well, this June is too close, and next June is too far away. I was actually thinking about Labor Day weekend, that Saturday.
No.
What?
It's opening weekend of college football season.
Are you kidding?
No, so unless you're thinking about having big screen televisions at the reception.
Don't even think about it, Alex.
Look, it is important to me.
Oh, and our wedding isn't.
No. Of course it is, but I can't call Mac Brown and have him reschedule.
You know, we couldn't have made the movie without both Richard Jones and Brandy Blevins as playing that normal couple that are both kind of afraid to commit. And again, it was coming from Littlefield. And I think the making it the Littlefield sequel, even though we very rarely refer to the events of that movie, it made me a better writer because I had an entire film's worth of backstory for these characters. So I could write choices for them, and I could make choices that felt very organic because I knew those characters.
Look at Me Again was a chance for me to play a major character in a feature film, which I had never done before, and I was very excited about that. And it really was a learning experience for me, and I think I took a lot away, and it acquired a greater appreciation for actors of creating the thread of consistency for your character throughout a film, and just how challenging that is when you're not shooting chronologically, which happens a lot more with a feature than it does with short films and things like that. And I think a lot about like the relationships that I built with a lot of the characters and the fun that we had on set, especially like Brandy Blevins and getting to know Jim better as a director and as a friend. And I mean, Jim and I keep up all the time now, and have a mutual love of college football that we can harass each other about. So, and I think life is really about relationships in a lot of ways. So, just like what we put into other people, and I think that's really key for me. And I think indie film is such a great conduit for us getting to know each other better. You're put in really harsh circumstances a lot of times, and trying to figure things out. And there's, it's not easy. So it's great for like real relationship building, because BS doesn't fly much on an indie film's set one of my favorite things about it is after we shot the film, somebody came up to me and was like, "Hey man, I met your wife the other night." And I was like, "Really? You know, where'd you see her?" And he was like, "Oh, she was at this actor mixer thing." And this is probably like a year and a half after we shot Look at Me Again. And so I'm like, my wife was at a actor mixer thing. That's weird that I wasn't there and she was there. Like, what is going on? And at some point we realized that they'd seen a picture of me and Brandy on social media because we had tons of pictures when we were married in the film. And so just kind of pulling all that together for me kind of freaking out a little bit what was going on there, to realizing that they'd been looking at stuff. And I think, Bray and I had a great relationship and on the set and off the set, and it made it really, really nice that I think we had something believable there on screen, hopefully. And I think hopefully we were able to create something that Jim was really proud of there too. Yeah, I mean, it's a really special time in my life as far as just growth as an artist and as a person. And I'm really thankful that Jim gave me the opportunity to be part of that.
Brandy Blevins is that actress that's on set that's always in a good mood and did several films for us, was probably one of the hardest working actors we ever had, but would walk on set and just the sweetest person, the nicest person, very talented.
Today is actually my birthday, and I am 40, so yeah, it's been 10 years. I was actually going through Facebook the other day looking at some pictures, and I came across some from set from Look at Me Again, and I just had to smile because those were some really great memories, really great times, and never a dull moment on a Twitchy Dolphin set, that is for sure. I'm just grateful for all the opportunities that I had with you and with Twitchy Dolphin, and getting to know everybody, making friends, and making memories. So
Casting Vanessa, at the time Vanessa Perry, now Vanessa Watkins, was the linchpin of the film, because part of the way the film sort of diverges or devolves is you've got Sherry, who's got this really great husband and a beautiful son, who is feeling that lack of excitement in her life, and so she spices things up by having an affair. And then you've got Kendra and Alex, who are running the risk of throwing a good thing away because they're in their own head. And then you've got Vanessa's character, who is bright-eyed and positive, who at the beginning of the movie is marrying a GI, and then by the end of the film doesn't come home. We saw a lot of actors for that part, and Stephanie Dunbar helped with the casting on that. And I remember we had worked with Vanessa before, and I remember wanting to use her again, but the part we'd used her before was really small, and her headshot came in, and there was a very natural innocence to her, and just this look that she had. It's hard to describe, that Stephanie said, even if she can't act, there's no way that the audience is going to not be moved by what happens to her just based on this face. But yes, Vanessa can act. One of the best actors to ever work with us. She would go on to do a bunch of other films with us. She would do films with other people. I mean, she's top notch, that good. And in this part, what she brought was this youthful optimism, this whole time being the one character in the film that's like, no, life's going to be okay. Life's going to be all right. And then we see what so many people in the history of this country have seen, that life isn't always going to be okay.
Answer it.
I left in the dead of the new moon moon's veil, I clung to the side of the camouflage trail.
Mrs. Daniels, it is my sad duty to inform you that Captain Richard Daniels was killed outside of Kandahar. He served with all the honor befitting the tradition of the United States Army and the United States military. The President and the entire country grieves for your loss.
Is all I have left from my little home. I don't want to leave, but this sorrow was all I could take. A staticky voice through the crackling speaker has followed me all the way here. The longer I go, we both will get.
The interesting thing for me about my military experience is I haven't really done anything that dealt with it directly, but I've done several things where I've at least touched on or wanted to discuss what happens to family members. And shooting that scene where she finds out her husband's not going to make it home, and we get this very, just this distance that she starts to form. It's something that Vanessa, she just nails, and it rips my guts out. And I don't really know, I don't know why I've never wanted to make a movie about the Army or about being a soldier. And it's probably something I'm gonna have to figure out myself. And maybe I've got that script in me. I said script, Cedric, script, not film. But it's something that I'm way more interested in discussing, is the fact that we've got these family members who are really just as heroic, who are sacrificing so much while their husbands, while having no control over the situation. So, Look at Me Again. It was such a fun experience. We did finish at the beach. We had another great beach trip. We shot the final scene there, and I came out of that just really satisfied and maybe even a little cocky. Maybe I was a little like, look what we pulled off for this amount of money. And again, look, the movie's flawed. The curse of all independent film. In my filmmaker friends who are watching this, you're like, the sound isn't great. And we finally figure sound out later on, and that's actually going to be part of the narrative of the show. But I have nothing but positive memories thinking about Look at Me Again. From, I think doing a good job of bridging that gap of being a little raunchy, having a ton of heart. I think getting to use Landry as much as we did, who was, the best dog. Like when Janet Mason says she's one of the best dogs she's ever met, she's one of the best dogs that ever walked the earth. And I remember that she actually loved being on set, which is not going to be the experience of our other dogs, but to the point that she learned what action meant. And so we had kind of had a grip, pull her off camera, and they were doing a 2-shot with Brandy and Richard. And I said action, and all of a sudden Landry yelped and ran into the middle of the camera. And so, of course, German Shepherd, so she's genius. So then we pull her out, and then we put her in another room, and then we say action, and then we hear her howling. And I'm like, okay, great. So we had to, when Landry was on set, use a different word for action, so that way we could actually get the shot. And then Jesse Ferraro was so much fun too, really bought into that part. And, I think he's the only nude scene we have in a movie, because he thought that it would be super funny to punctuate this one scene where he had hooked up with a girl in his best friend's living room and was laying all naked on their couch. And we don't really reveal he's naked until the final shot, and he just walks down the hallway with his bare rear. So it was that kind of film, and it's been fun to look back, and definitely it's really one of the tops for me. I still love it so much.